Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another episode of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you beauties. Thanks for hanging out as always as we go through. Going to recap a little bit of Kespa Cup round robin action, and I'll tell you right now, don't expect a plethora of highlights to come in because I know Kespa and Disney Plus are coming swinging for any of these highlight vids.
Which is understandable and not like it's the strangest occurrence within the world of League of Legends or media rights in general. It is a little strange given, again, these steps that this tournament and the organizers have made as far as making it a bigger event, including Western teams getting an English-speaking broadcast and then all of a sudden restricting the regions that can actually watch the event, and then on top of it, going near nuclear mode as far as taking down and copyright strikes type of things. Don't got to worry about that. We're playing it safe today, but we can still chat about these games and all the action that has gone through and break it down for you guys here today.
And we start in that Group A action. This was the spiciest group, I think, because there's, depending on what the subs in Gen G looked like, there was, maybe 3-4 teams you could be talking about coming through here. And this was an absolute blitz of games over the weekend. Like 9 games a day on average throughout. And somehow, some way through it all, Cloud9 not disappointing for the North American fans in the big matchups. I mean, across the day, across the weekend, Blabber, some of his best international performances that we've seen ever.
It's a weird combination because they've done plenty enough that you can be happy with the performance, with the direction, with the changes and possibilities for this iteration of Cloud9, but they haven't looked dominant enough that you are truly, I think, without a doubt, confident in this performance, in this direction for the organization, but still good enough throughout the matches that that you've required to be at that type of level and have set themselves up to push themselves to that next tier by getting into those knockout playoffs.
And, the big head-to-head that was basically the decider against Fear X to close things out in their round-robin action. They fall behind a bit, but get back into the game. They show some composure. As I mentioned, Blabber plays great. Thanatos and Vulcan also have a fantastic game, and they win despite some heavily suspect Yunara play out of Sven in that game.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those ones where it absolutely is a concern, especially when, again, you're talking about more so these newer 200 years Riot Champion designed, characters. And for someone like Sven, we still haven't quite seen a full mastery, a real comfort level on anything in that regard. And I think that's certainly going to be an avenue that could be punished within Fearless Draft, as that is going to be the next avenue that we are stepping into with this Kespa tournament. I think, again, it's been around, but not really, again, a factor given the way that these games and the amount of games that you're playing. Entering into this knockout stage, you will be having Fearless play at least some part of a role within that series, and I think that's certainly an avenue that, again, if you are opponent to Cloud9, you can clearly target players like Sven and still APA, given the champions that we have seen him use at this event, to say, prove that you can be lethal, prove that you can be a difficult challenge on something else.
Yeah, I mean, it really was just a Corky Talia show for the two of them in pretty much all of their matches. But 3-1, Cloud9 advanced to the last chance qualifier. They obviously don't finish first in their group. That lone loss came to Hanwha Life, who were a perfect 4-0, and this didn't look like a for-fun tournament for Guma and the boys. My man got not one, but 2 double kills in a 1v2 scenario, and they completely destroyed absolutely every matchup. Their numbers through their 4 games were astronomically ridiculous.
It's fantastic. This is like going to your favorite ice cream store, and all of a sudden you've been eating this one flavor of ice cream all year, and that was the special one, and it was fantastic. The next year's special edition flavor is even better tasting, but it's in a completely different way. So it's wowing your taste buds type of thing. That's how I feel about taking a lick of the Hanwha Life ice cream cone, because yes, Gumayushi steps in and you've already had a high quality, high performance ADC in Viper, but the way that Guma wants to play the game and can truly take over and dominate with the rest of his teammates in these mid to later parts, that has been a different flavor for this Hanwha Life team. And I think you're going to start to see some of that swagger, mojo, and energy that Guma Yushi can bring to a team, to a bottom lane when he is performing at his peak.
And we saw a little spicy LeBlanc support as a way to try and counter Guma in that bot lane, and that did not work so well because the Vietnamese bot lane was 0-4 by 6 minutes, and Guma multiple times had like a 2k individual gold lead by 10 minutes. So a couple check marks early on for Hanwha in the Guma Yushi era. Can't wait for all the overreactions of Gen G going 0-4, dead last in this group. We knew Chovy and Ruler weren't going to be playing, but they had 3 starters against Cloud9 that they lost that opener, and then quickly Canyon got subbed out, and the Gwen game out of Keen, I could see the PTSD flashbacks of some old Afrika Freak rosters where he's 5-1 with the 3k gold lead and his team's losing.
It's a clear indication that what is going on, the communication, the strategy, the execution that we all know and you should be fearful of going up against a Gen G, a lot of that is coming down to Chovy, coming down to players like Ruler being that guy who's enough of a difference maker that you then elevate everybody else on this roster to enable them to make opportunities and plays possible, where then that is changing the course of this game. That's where you see it. I think especially with some of these other matchups, again, LCS, LCK, it didn't matter. I think you can still see those weaknesses and problems within Gen G without Chovy and Ruler at that point. That doesn't mean that you can't find positives or have had enough power with this roster without those 2 players in order to represent and show out strong at this event. It didn't work out like that, and I think again it just goes more so to show the importance and strategic value that those 2 can provide on top of the skill set and raw mechanical inputs that they can put through.
And just for the sweeping clickbait title, you're going to be going, Gen G not a playoff team in the LCK 2026. I mean, no question, Gen G. I mean, case in point, I don't think they're taking this event that seriously. It's not hard to be super locked in. I mean, you saw Keen and Zeus dancing side by side at level 1. This is a more for fun event, it seems, for Gen G than maybe even Hanwha or T1, who have new players that they gotta, work around. So please don't overreact, guys. Please.
It's flat out the one team and organization that you can immediately identify as one that there's no pro and con necessarily to this event. The pro, yeah, sure, you get that experience, you get that early look that we've talked about with all these other squads, but how much of that real takeaway is what you think you need to make that equational difference to become the world champions all of a sudden, instead of just the back-to-back domestic champion situation for a Gen G? Absolutely, the investment, the gains, the sites, the experimentation that you want to see at this event is much higher for squads even like defending world champions T1, who are having Peyz in the bottom lane. Hanwha Life adding in Guma Yushi and all these other things, even the experimentation and changes coming from the North American squads that are attending this Kespa Cup. Yeah, Gen G and a Gen G without a Chovy, without a Ruler, I don't think that they're all that invested into this event. Yes.
T1 somehow is invested, even after already playing they played more preseason for fun tournament games than Na'Vi and Disguise played total games in the summer split already, and it looked like they were having fun on the Rift. Owner had some dominant performances. We got a Faker versus Scout, where we saw Scout's Mel was not, in fact, on quite the same level as Faker, and I don't know if I've ever seen a more aggressive, far forward playing Kalista game than we got out of Peyz.
Well, I think you can see that type of Kalista game when you're the best Kalista in the region and possibly maybe even the world at this point, given that it is the LCK. But Peyz absolutely showcasing himself and showing out for the T1 fans and the LCK as a whole. Really excited about this one because, again, doesn't matter all that much. But to get that first step, that right step on the right footing for Peyz with T1 is that extra check mark that you wanted to see in this offseason, the one that can ease any of the concerns that might be valid, given the way that you have seen Hanwha Life and especially Gumayushi adapt to playing with Hanwha Life. Having Peyz step in and immediately give you this type of big-time Giga Chad performance, and especially on a champion as unique as Kalista, that is one of those things that is very, very spicy and special for T1 to see. And I think, again, if it with everything else on this roster playing out pretty well, Doran and Owner having their good time, Faker not really having to do too much because, yes, it is the bottom lane popping off and leading the charge for T1.
Yeah, Doran was exchanging solo kills, with Ray Farkey, Team Japan a couple times. This was about as loosey-goosey as you'll see T1 stroll to a 3-0 run. This is the only group that has 4 teams, so 3-0, enough for first place. As great as things were for Cloud9, God bless them, Team Liquid, the other NA brethren. This is about as vintage an international run that you can get out of a North American team. Start with the 50-minuter against Nongshim that we knew. That's the team you got to beat if you're going to finish second behind T1 in this group. And things are looking great. Core JJ's on Amumu. His synergy with Jose Diodo looks on point. And then we get back-to-back-to-back flubs out of Team Liquid. Jan steps too far forward. Quid tries to make a play and dies. And then there's a 2-man Elder attempt that's a complete throw. And Team Liquid loses the game and ultimately doesn't get out of the group.
In one of those situations where, you're wearing a white shirt and you get like this one drop of spaghetti sauce on it. And then, I gotta get it out of here. You end up spreading and all of a sudden you're wearing a spaghetti sauce tie-dyed shirt at that point. One mistake turns into another. And then it is a catastrophe. That's the way it played out in that matchup for Team Liquid. These mistakes are understandable. They are recoverable from type of situations. But when you layer them one after the other, you've built yourself a hill that you cannot climb out and away from a squad like a T1 in a situation, or even anybody else when you're talking at this event as far as the power, when you're looking at what Team Liquid showed out. Now, there's enough positives, enough good signs I saw throughout this event that it is one of those ones where it isn't, this is going to be a downward trajectory, downward year type of thing. I think there absolutely are the rebounds, the rebuilds, and re-strengthenings that Team Liquid can go through. But I don't think it's going to be as instant plug-and-play, smash, success, hit as we all, I think, wanted it to initially be with some of these changes, specifically Quid joining the squad in the mid lane.
Yeah, and, we got a bunch of Yone games out of Quid to varying degrees of success. But again, 3 games to go off of is barely even a microscopic body of work to actually be putting any judgment towards Team Liquid. But like I said, especially the start of that Nongshim game, and when the chips didn't matter at all, they go on to smash Team Japan to not go undefeated. But the synergy from Jose and Core JJ looked like it was there early.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a really critical part of any success that this Team Liquid team is going to have, is having that be peak synergy and being able to be creative between those two and how you're picking, what you're picking, and how you're utilizing it. I think that is an avenue that I want to see explored by Spawn and the coaching staff here with Team Liquid. But again, 3 games, yes, not the most impressive. You're not leaving this one with a big smile on your face situation. But it absolutely isn't one of those ones where you're going immediately, it's a failure, this is not the path that we need to go down. Still going to take some work for Team Liquid.
And, you got to account for the scrims that probably went into place that they had with some of these teams, which is something you can always glean from and knowledge from these international events that I think often goes forgotten. I don't know how long Team Liquid's going to be there. I don't know when they got there. But there's always talk about boot camping in Korea for some of these NA teams anyways. So still going to give it a check mark, I assume. Green check for going to this event and training for Team Liquid. Maybe the team feels a little bit differently. Not to be outdone by their other LCK brethren. Another undefeated squad at the top of what everybody was calling the Fries Group B action. D plus Kia with their new bot lane. Showmakers having fun again and absolutely dominated in their 4 games. Smash gets a pentakill in his first tournament with D plus Kia, and they got that Disney Plus buff over on D Plus.
That's never gonna go away
No.
as long as Disney is still wanting to find some ways to be involved. The D plus Kia connection is always going to be one of the strongest ones we might throw out there, and it could be even better if it is a strong D plus Kia team playing out on the Rift the way that we have seen them play to start out this event. Because you're right, Smash picking up the pentakill, Showmaker looking like he's having a good time. These are all of the key and most important good early signs you needed to see if you're talking about D plus Kia having a successful year, having a rebound year where they are now putting themselves into that top conversation of being a real contender in the LCK. Having a player like Smash being able to contribute alongside someone like Showmaker, the continued development, of course, of Lucid and Siwu in the top side, that's going to be things that you can really be starting to get excited about with this D plus Kia roster.
And some of these games, by the way, I think versus the DN Freaks, Siwu was 0-0-0 until the very final fight of the game where he picked up a couple assists to close things out. So I didn't really feel like D Plus was tested that much throughout. And again, this was the Fries group, as we alluded to. It was the most wide open for them. BDD only played, I think he only played one game, and then it was full Academy for KT Rolster, and the bigger surprise is probably the DN Freaks with what's primarily their B-tier team coming away with the big head-to-head win against DRX to get that second spot and head to the last chance qualifier. Why is DRX subbing out Vincenzo after he has 2 amazing games?
I don't know what's going on, and I think that kind of is the general label that I would throw over any conversation about things related to DRX and DN Freaks over the past year and what's going on with them. But hey, I'm here for the rebound with the DN Freaks. I think that absolutely could be one of the fun stories within the LCK for the next year, if that is able to come through, especially after what was the expectations and failure of last year's iteration. That certainly could be a story. But I think when you're talking about looking at D plus Kia, the Fries group, and what's going on here, none of it's going to matter until you start to play against these other squads and these other groups here at the event and really see what how you're stacking up at this point in the year at this point. Because yes, what's going on in the Fries group, I can tell you, that's not the same experience that you're going to have against anybody else going on and still remaining at this event.
And, this Fries group will get extended to this last chance qualifier, which has all of those second seed teams. So that's Cloud9, the DN Freaks, and Nongshim. They're all going to be playing a single round robin best of 3, which, you're playing the other 2 teams in a best of 3, and only the first place squad out of that will advance to knockouts. So obviously winning 2-0 versus 2-1 is going to have implication. I assume that tiebreaker will be number 1 head-to-head and number 2 games won. You gotta expect Cloud9 to be able to beat Nongshim and the DN Freaks. If you want to be like a legit title contender within the LCS, you have to be beating the mid to bottom tier LCK teams.
The flat-out success at this event looks like getting by Nongshim, getting by those squads that you're going to be up against in this point if you're our Cloud9. It's understandable. It is, again, not one of these ones where you could be so overwhelmingly favored that you can't see an avenue where you lose, where you slip up, where you make the mistakes that do lead to the spaghetti tie-dye shirt that NA is wearing. That's so many important formal international
They got a
events.
closet full of those shirts, I think.
Yeah, we've been cataloging them. But for Cloud9, I think, again, the expectation should be there on this team finding a way through this point of it. I do bring up, yes, the concerns that we did talk about with the champion pool for APA, for especially Sven in the bottom lane when it comes towards those newer champions. That's going to be an avenue that you can bet your bottom dollar on. You're going to have exposed by these rest of these LCK teams, no matter what preparations you take. So you better be ready to execute on some of these other champions at this stage of the event.
Yeah, as we're actually going to get into Fearless with these best of 3s, and I mentioned it with Team Liquid, just more games, more exposure is better learning, even if this is on a previous patch where you still have to worry about Otacon, which isn't even going to be there in 2026. But you advance for Cloud9, and then you're guaranteed 2 best-of-3 series against a premier team that's either going to be Hanwha T1 or D plus Kia. So much knowledge to be gleaned if they get there. They're probably going to get pumped 0-4 in those matchups, but more exposure and more opportunities to learn.
Yeah, it is extremely valuable to get that matchup regardless of how that matchup ends up playing out and what goes through with that one. Because yes, again, early, so much of this can matter, can't matter, won't matter, whatever. Getting that exposure to the top teams in the LCK and understanding where that bar is and where you stack up against it and just how much work and what you need to work on to get into an opportunity where you can take down one of these squads. That's going to be a certain benefit and boon. I think that a lot of squads in North America, we haven't had that type of comparison, that type of exposure early on in an off season before things really start to kick off. I think I like this for Cloud9's chances to try and find a way through at this point. And I think, again, having Blabber have the performances that he did early on in this one is one of those avenues that can help ease some of those concerns that you are maybe having about entering into more important fearless draft situations with APA, with Sven. I think the way that Blabber has facilitated and really performed for this team early on is that good sign.
And how about the trio of the other teams, whatever the matchups end up being? They're probably all going to end up playing each other when there's only 4 squads, but you've got obviously Guma versus T1, the history there, and then you throw in Smash on D+, Smash going versus Guma and versus T1, so the bot lane stories are S tier left in this tourney.
This is how you know it's the Disney effect. These are straight up some Disney storylines, making sure that you've got T1 still here. You got the Guma Hanwha life angle, Smash picking up the Penta, and more with D plus Kia. And if we can just get that extra ray of sunshine from the west coming on through for Cloud9, I think that would be the perfect little story that we could have to talk about this next stage in the Kespa Cup.
Sven just hits a little different than those other 380 carries we just mentioned if Cloud9 is able to get to that next round. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners. Thanks so much for hanging out. We will catch you on that flippity flip.